Let's start our bulletin this hour in Egypt, where at least 40 supporters of the ousted head of state Mohamed Morsi have been shot dead by Egyptian security forces during a protest in Cairo early on Monday. Reports say several people have been injured in the worst clashes since the protests began late in June. The protesters were calling for the reinstatement of Mohamed Morsi to the presidency. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood says its members were fired on while holding a sit-in at a presidential guard barracks. However, the army says that a terrorist group, quote unquote, had tried to storm the barracks. It says one soldier was killed and several others were injured. Mr. Morsi is believed to be held at the Presidential Guard Club in the eastern Nasser city district of the capital. His supporters, many of them members of the Muslim Brotherhood, have been staging a sit-in there since late last week, demanding his reinstatement to power. Now, CCTV's Adel El Mahrouki spoke to those caught up in the clashes between Morsi supporters and the military, and he filed the following report.
What began as a peaceful sit-in at the Presidential Guard's headquarters suddenly turned violent. Morsi supporters say it began at dawn. Standing with a piece of skull in his hands, this man said he saw it all.
While we were praying, the police took us by surprise and started shooting at us, and the army protected them. They were using shotguns and tear gas. Then they escalated to live ammunition.
I was sleeping at the Presidential Guard. I woke up after the prayer and I heard shots 1 kilometer away. Then the firing started from the Presidential Guard side.
Contradicting information from some who say they are eyewitnesses. It seems that there is an agreement. It happened around the prayer time, at the end of it, or right after, but no one knows what ignited it. It is commonly known that the Presidential Guard would attack only to push back a threat, but we have no confirmation so far from their side.
There are direct shots with live ammunition in the chest, head, abdomen and the diaphragm, and all are killing shots. We have at least 20 people dead in this clinic.
An army officer saw me and I said, "Don't shoot." I was unarmed, but he shot me anyway. Everyone is now dead.
CCTV has confirmed reports that the army has videos of the attacks. It aims to release them to the public.
Egypt's sleep was disrupted by the screams of one of the deadliest clashes it's seen in days. And protesters here are determined to continue until President Morsi returns to his position. Adel Mahroui, CCTV, Cairo.
Now, despite the deadly violence, tens of thousands of Muslim Brotherhood members do continue to gather to denounce the military's actions late last month. However, CCTV's Jack Barton found out that not everyone is a Morsi supporter and that the danger to democracy, well, not radical Islam, was the only topic being shouted from the stage.
Squabbling over who gets what job in the country's new interim government has exposed the deep divisions in the country's opposition alliance. It seems the easy part was getting rid of a government, but forming a new stable one to replace it is proving a much harder task. These are tens of thousands of supporters of President Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood. Perhaps the only place in Egypt where there is total unity right now is among the supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. Why do you believe that President Morsi is still the legitimate leader of this country?
Because he came through the ballot box. Egyptians went to the ballot box, stood in the polls, voted for him. He is the democratically elected leader of the state.
That is the most common complaint. In fact, it's the only complaint here.
I'm not from Muslim Brotherhood. I'm just an Egyptian. I'm just an Egyptian citizen. I'm coming here to protect my right and vote.
My vote. Where is my right? I am Egyptian. Where is my right?
Amongst this crowd, I've met more than a dozen Egyptians who don't support the Muslim Brotherhood or Mohamed Morsi, but who would have liked the opportunity to vote him out of office in a functioning democracy. One of those people is retired Special Forces General Wiam. General.
Yes, sir.
Now, you don't support Morsi or the Brotherhood, so why are you here?
They have a choice to stay more 3 years or maybe 7 years. It depends about the people. But if you move it by force, this means the new one, we will move it by force too. And this is not democratic.
So a protest movement that was once unified against a single leader now finds itself increasingly divided, pitting Egyptians against Egyptians. And the only thing that is now clear is that this country's problems are a long way from being solved. Jack Barton, CCTV, Cairo.
Time for a short break on African Live. Here's what's coming up next.
Mugabe, let ZANU-PF think that they will win it. But in the face of unfree and unfair conditions, I don't think the forthcoming election will be legitimate.
Zimbabwe's Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai makes a half-hearted entry into the race for the presidency. And still on matters elections, campaigns are underway for Mali's crucial elections. We'll have the details on that when we come back.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need some trade and justice. Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
Welcome back. Now we are of course keeping a very close eye on the developments in Egypt. Of course about 40 or so, at least 40 people, that's what we know so far. 40 supporters of the ousted President Mohamed Morsi have been shot dead by Egyptian security forces, and that happened during a protest in Cairo. Of course, some of the supporters of President Mohamed Morsi have been coming out at a location where they do believe is being held, and we're going live now to the Egyptian capital to get the latest from Cairo, where CCTV's Adel El-Makhrouhi is standing by. Adel, what's the latest on the number of casualties from the pro-Morsi protest in Cairo?
Well, the number of casualties are just increasing. As soon as all the clinics and hospitals that have received some of the dead or injured people from or protesters from Morsi supporters, they report them to the health ministry. So the numbers are still escalating, but we expect around 50 so far, as some sort of it's quite near to what the Muslim Brotherhood have announced earlier, and over maybe hundreds, around 1,000 also injured about that. But so far it seems that the army has managed to secure and isolate the entrances to the presidential guards headquarters from the protesters, and so far it seems a little bit starting to get quiet.
Indeed, the Muslim Brotherhood also accused the army of essentially storming what is a peaceful protest. Has there been any reaction to that from the military?
Yes, the military has not released a statement yet. However, it has broadcasted through the Egyptian national television videos that it has recorded during the clashes. The videos show that among the protesters there are some who had rifles, shotguns, and were attacking the armed forces. And also they have the video shows that the protesters supporting President Morsi have set an apartment on fire, and the armed forces were trying to extinguish it. At least this is the messages that we have got from the videos that has been broadcasted. Other than that, we believe that there are more videos from the armed forces to come within the coming hours, but no words yet.
Indeed. What else do we know about the process, however, of setting up an interim cabinet? Is it now certain what position Mohamed El-Baradei will hold in that interim cabinet, if at all?
Well, there seem to be none so far. What happened after the clashes and this morning's two of the biggest Islamic parties, the Noor Salafi party, which was the second largest elected political party in the past parliament, and once was the ally of the Muslim Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party, as long with it as the Strong Egypt party, which is its president, Abdel Menem Abu Futuh, was one of the leading presidential candidates in the race with Morsi. He had about nearly 4 million votes, just 1 million shorter than Mohamed Morsi in the first phase of the election. So they seem to be the most popular Islamic stream in the negotiations so far, and they announced that they will boycott the dialogue. They believe that what happened from the army should not pass by easily, and they say they will not participate in the negotiations or dialogue to form an interim government. Strong Egypt Party has requested that the interim president, Adli Mansour, would resign, taking and showing responsibility for the death of the Egyptian citizens who were killed this morning.
Indeed. We'll have to leave it there for the time being, though. Thank you very much for that update. That's CCTV's Adel Makhrouki in the Egyptian capital of Cairo, where he says, of course, just to recap what we've been talking about, at least 50 people so far dead. And of course, the military has broadcast footage of what it says were armed attackers among the protesters, of course, leading to the fatal shootout earlier today, in which at least 50 people have died. Still on elections, but elsewhere on the continent, Zimbabwe's Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai said on Sunday that he was launching his election campaign with what he described as a heavy heart. He says no reforms have been put in place to guarantee that the upcoming polls in July will be free or fair. With the details, here's CCTV's Carol Oyola.
This election will be rigged. These are the words of Zimbabwe's Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai. He spoke while launching his campaign against President Robert Mugabe. Tsvangirai, who made a failed attempt to have the July 31st election delayed, said Mugabe's ZANU-PF party was using bureaucratic obstacles and tricks to try to hold on to power.
We are faced with an election without reforms and against a leopard that has remained faithful to its spots. But our faith in God and our collective desire for real transformation will make us triumph over the setbacks we have experienced.
The July poll is Tsvangirai's third attempt to unseat Mugabe. The two were forced into a power-sharing deal after the last disputed polls in 2008. However, Tsvangirai told youth members of his Movement for Democratic Change party that they should not get their hopes up.
Mugabe and the ZANU-PF think that they will win it. But in the face of unfree and unfair conditions, I don't think the forthcoming election will be legitimate. It doesn't matter who wins.
Despite concerns over the election, youth members at the rally said they were very optimistic.
I think we are going to win the election resoundingly. MDCT is going to win.
This is our year. This is the time we've been waiting for. Morgan Tsvangirai is going to win this election. And come August 2013, we are going to be in the new government.
Tsvangirai's MDC wanted to delay the election until mid-August to allow more time to prepare a smooth vote free of the deadly violence that marred the 2008 polls. The Zimbabwean Prime Minister has been pressing for access to state media for all political parties and cast iron guarantees that security forces will not meddle in politics. Zimbabwean political analyst Ebo Mandaza said it may not provide any meaningful change, but could mean a lot for the country.
On the one hand, it's a typical election, but on the other hand, it's Zimbabwe like saying this is election of the century, likely to be a contentious election, a highly contested one with many ramifications.
Political analysts say another contested result could interrupt impoverished Zimbabwe's recovery from a decade of economic decline that has forced hundreds of thousands to flee the southern African country. Carol Oyola, CCTV.
Now, campaigning for Mali's presidential election scheduled for the 28th of July officially started on Sunday. The still divided nation is struggling to move on from an 18-month political crisis in which Islamist rebels seized enormous parts of the northern end of the country in the wake of a military coup in March 2012. Critics, however, say the elections are premature, but presidential candidates are already competing for the top spot. CCTV's Clementine Logan has more.
Election fever is underway in Mali ahead of its watershed presidential election. The nation is still struggling to move on from war and return to constitutional order after an 18-month political crisis. Malians of all political persuasions feel the time for change has come.
Mali needs change and fresh ideas. Mali needs people who haven't been in charge for the past 2 years. That is why we are here to support Mara today.
I think that he's the only politician able to get this country out of the trouble that it has been in for 10 years now. He's the only candidate who can put this country back to work, can restore Mali's values, and can help young people who have lost all hope find it again.
Mali's Constitutional Court released a list of candidates on Friday, which features 4 former prime ministers, an array of political heavyweights, and just 1 woman. So far, they've stuck to an uncontroversial agenda, spelling out the same goals: to rebuild, restore peace, ensure security and development, and fight corruption.
It's really about electing someone who will make peace between Malians and rebuild the government.
The poll will be the first since a coup in March last year that ousted democratically elected President Amadou Toumani Touré, creating a vacuum that allowed al-Qaeda-linked groups to seize northern Mali. France, which is beginning to withdraw most of the troops it sent in January, has been pushing for a quick election in the hope of restoring order under an interim government. That transitional government lifted a nearly 6-month state of emergency on Saturday, but critics argue that polls are being rushed and, far from restoring democracy, threaten to plunge what remains a divided nation further into chaos. Mali's election commission has also expressed doubts about holding the vote on time, with some 500,000 people still displaced after the conflict. Many observers have also raised concerns over security challenges in the vast desert north. On Friday, Malian troops entered the last rebel stronghold, the key northern city of Kidal, which had been held by Tuareg separatists since Islamists were driven out. The lack of government control in the city was seen as a major obstacle to organising a fair election. Now, a UN peacekeeping mission is charged with ensuring security during and after the elections. A European Union mission has also begun work and will report on whether the elections, which could go to a second round in August, are credible a few weeks after the result is announced. Clementine Logan, CCTV.